My name is Sue Perrin, and I am the Minister for Sacred Traditions and Rituals, and on behalf of myself and all of our council members, I want to welcome everyone this evening, those who are here in person, those who are Zooming with us. Wow, it's just so wonderful to see this room filled after struggling throughout this pandemic for the last 2.5 years. Thank you for sharing this portion of your evening with us. A special welcome to those of you who are here with us for the very first time. And if you haven't had an opportunity and would like to stay in touch with us, we would love for you to fill out a welcome card. It's a little white card on the welcome table back there. That way we can warmly welcome you and we can stay in touch. And you can leave those on the table or in the offering stars when they are passed around. As we do several times throughout our service year as part of our Tranquility with Tea services, which you are going to experience this evening, we share a call to community, which offers a quiet opportunity to reflect on the needs and concerns of the community and the world, and how these connect with our lives, and the principles of compassion, of love, understanding, faith, and justice for all. These are the principles of creation spirituality which our star community embraces, and you will find those inside the service sheet. They're spelled out for you. As the service unfolds this evening, you will be invited to participate in a number of different ways. Please, we invite you to do so as you are able. There are explanations about the service in the service sheet. Please, as we have opportunities to sit and reflect, you might want to read about the service this evening. And after the service, we have refreshments. There will be time to welcome our guests this evening and for you all to be with us in connecting, sharing sort of ways together. We begin our time together with each service by preparing ourselves in the symbolic ritual of hand washing. And that is at the small altar, the welcome altar, as you see directly in front of me. Because it is a pandemic, we are using hand sanitizer rather than water, but the symbolism still remains the same. The icon this evening that you will see on the table are 3 images of the Black Madonna surrounding a copy of the New Testament in Gullah. And just as these beautiful images represent the need for change, so do the Gospels in the New Testament. Sitting on top of the New Testament is a rattle. And some of you may be familiar with the fact that often the Black Madonna is portrayed with a rattle or rattles in her crown or her headdress. Rattles symbolize the need for shaking up, the need for change. And that indeed is what the Black Madonna represents. So if you have not done so already, I would ask you to please join us as we prepare for the service. Going to the altar, there are 2 washing stations. Put just a little sanitizer on your hands, rub them together. You are preparing yourself for this seat in the circle. And once you've done that, just come back to the circle and Peter will play for us. Please join us in this ritual. Will you join your voices with mine as we pray together in unison the call to prayer found in your service sheet? Joining our voices, we bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers to a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this place as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. At this time in the service, we bless our time together by going to the altar and lighting one of the candles, the small candles, preferably from the large community candle, but if not, from one of the other candles that are already lit. So at this time, I invite you to go and light a candle as we bless our time together.
This is a prayer of invitation and blessing. Creator God, we ask to be closer to you and thank you for our capacity to pray. We ask for your understanding and thank you for bringing us the light of your presence. We ask for happiness and thank you for the joy of life. We ask for strength and thank you for the courage you have given us to hope. We ask for your presence and thank you for living in our hearts. We ask, and we have already received. Blessed be your name, O God, our Creator. Amen.
It is with a great deal of pleasure that we welcome these prominent leaders of our community. They have joined us in our Star Circle tonight to tell just a portion of their stories. I believe with all my heart that it is through our stories that we can find a place of connection. If I turn around, you're not going to hear me. But this is Dr. Vera Jeter Jones, Dr. Shelor Snodgrass. Snoddy. Thank you. Charles Mann. And over here is Patrice Fenneman Fowler, who is going to play for us. In your bulletin or in your service sheet is written just a little tiny portion of the credentials, and I don't want to take 1 second away from their time. I just want to say welcome to these people that I call my friends.
Good afternoon. I am Vera Jeter Jones, one whose beginning started in Ethiopia, from Ethiopia to Angola, which is near Senegal River. From there, my great-grandparents sailed to the New World, which is America, and docked in Virginia. From Virginia, South Carolina, Newberry County, from Newberry County to Union County in the early 1800s. And I will give you just some of the legacy of my grandfather, whose name was Mabry Laws. Mabry Laws. This family was united in Union County. Grandfather, and we call him Grandpa. I never knew him, but passed down from my mother, Caroline and Aaron Laws. They met in the Tuckertown community, which is Carlisle, and were married. Then they began to have children. And around 1858, a bouncing baby boy named Mabry Laws was born there in Tuckertown in Union County. He was born into slavery and lived as a slave until the Emancipation Proclamation became law in 1863. And he was around 6 years old. He began as a little slave boy whose duty was to fan the flies as his master ate. And later on, he grew up, married my grandma, and they remained on the plantation, and even though they were free, they still acted as if they were slaves. Mabry didn't have a formal education, but according to my mother, he was very smart and a self-taught person. His math skills were second to none, which passed on to some of his grandchildren. After Mabry became an adult, he married Agnes Thompson Lyles, who was my grandma. Now, some of you know I'm jumping now, bird walking, as they told us in District 7. Some of you may know Mr. Vera Jeter, who taught at Spartan High, may have taught some of you, math teacher. And he was brilliant. His name was Harold Mabry. And he got all kind of free scholarships to go to University of North Carolina and Rutgers College, free education. And his son, now Howard Jr., who lives in Columbia, is brilliant. And he has a master's in computer science and math. His name is Harold Mabry Jeter. So this is just giving a little sketch of what he was about. My grandpa was about education, loving one another, and religion. And this is what he taught his children, who was my mom. And she did pass that on down to us. And when my grandfather became an adult, some of you may remember, no, you don't remember. There was a large earthquake in 1887 in South Carolina, and it was very frightening to the young people all over South Carolina, but they were in Union County. And my mom said that shook them. They shook and shook, and they prayed and they prayed. They were not church people, young adults. And after that night, they decided that we're going to get some religion and we're going to build a church. And they did build St. Luke AME Zion Church now, which is in Union County, still going strong. They built that church. And from that, went on, taught my mom, you love, be religious. Then this is how the children came down, his children. I had an aunt named Cleora Robinson. She was my mother's oldest sister. She and her husband had 3 children. They didn't have any grandchildren, and we were their grands. They sent 3 kids way back then to college. One of them was a principal in Atlanta, one taught in Chester, and the other one was a great cosmetologist, and she taught cosmetology. Then later on, my mom came along. But my aunt, let me tell you about my aunt in St. Luke. She put the first electric lights in St. Luke. The pulpit that's there now, and it's still beautiful. They're still using it. This is my aunt. This is Mabry Lyles' oldest daughter. Then my mom came along. She had 6 children, and I am the youngest of hers. I am the baby child who is alive, and I am Mabry Lyles' grandchild. I didn't say great-grand. Can you believe it? But I was born late in my mother's life. All my siblings have gone on, as well as my parents, and I'm still standing on the teachings of Mabry Lyles that taught my mom. And my mama served in her church. She got the piano in the church that's in St. Luke now. They're still playing that piano, and my mother bought the piano for me when I was a little girl, and she wanted me to play the piano. So she got the piano, and they are using that piano until this day. And all 5 of her children, and my dad, Chana, sent 5 kids out of 6 to college. The one that didn't go wanted to go in the military, so he went in the military, and his daughter is here. Right there, raise your hand. And that's my niece, that's my oldest brother's child. And it goes on, and as we move on, most of us have tried to get an education based on the teaching and pulling and driving that my mother did. And my mom and dad, I gotta give him some credit too, because whatever mom said, all right, Mahela. I had a good dad. And he pushed us along with what Mahela said is gonna be. And we all went to college except one. And this is about all that I'm going to share with you. There's some more, but I just hate I didn't get to see my granddad. He was dead before I was born. And I heard so much about it, and I would see my mom tear up when she talked about him. And I still do, even though I didn't know him. I tear up when I think about what happened at the end. Where's my bell? At the end, who knows what this is? What is this? Nobody know? A cowbell, thank you. At the end, my granddad had cows, Mabry Laws had cows. And they got out of the pasture. He went to look for them through the woods down in Union County. And he was listening for this bell. You know, that's how they would find where their cows and go to their cows. He went to the bell. He found his cows. Someone had taken his cows and claimed them. And immediately he was lynched. Not only was he lynched, he was thrown in Tiger River. That's the legacy of Mabry Laws. And as I close out, I'll say, I want to see you there. I usually sing it, but I can't sing it because I'm kind of full. Where the sun is always shining, I'll see you there, where sorrows are no more, where we'll join hands together and sing around the throne. Can't hardly wait till the day I'll see you again. And this is my daughter, Trina, and my grandson. And these are Mabry Lyles' grandchildren there, Trina and Antonio. And that's his grandchild there, Gloria. Thank you all for coming, and thank all of my friends for coming to share this afternoon with me. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I will begin my time of sharing with you by describing who I am and the formation of who I am today through my most impactful childhood development experience. I describe myself as a social entrepreneur, a lifelong learner, a lover of culture and people, and an advocate for the total well-being of the most vulnerable and most marginalized people in American society. But most importantly, I describe myself as a disciple of Jesus Christ. As a small girl growing up in the late 1960s in rural Clarendon County, I was riveted by the sight of my father's unselfish and tireless efforts to ensure that our rural Baptist church served and took care of the unwanted, the underserved, and underprivileged of our vast rural community. I vividly remember how my father, the now deceased Deacon William J. Harvin Sr., motivated and galvanized our church to address the numerous societal ills that plagued the majority of our community. As a result of the leadership and advocacy taken by our church to address many social ills, my church was able to positively impact voter registration, voter participation, high school graduation and high school and college attendance rates, workforce training, employment with livable wages and benefits, literacy, racial discrimination, inequity, injustice, adequate housing, and many, many other problems that the rural community of Clarendon County faced. Fortunately, during this era, drugs, crimes, and juvenile justice delinquency were not major issues that negatively dominated the African American communities, especially in the South, on a regular basis. Additionally, I witnessed the dire level of poverty and hopelessness that existed within my rural community. Single parent and two-parent households with lots of children who were unable to adequately feed and clothe themselves, often living on farms of their employers in 2- and 3-room shotgun-style shacks with no plumbing. But even dire than their level of poverty, I witnessed the deep level of hopelessness. This hopelessness seemed to penetrate every aspect of their lives. Too young to understand the cause and effects of this hopelessness, all I can remember is the desperate pleas for help that many of these families cried out to my father and to our church for. In response, my church and many other Black churches in my community acted as champions of social change to provide a better life for many of these families. During this era of social, economic, political, and hope deprivation for many African Americans, the church themselves had to be more than a place to learn about and worship God. In a segregated society, church was a place where people fulfilled their human potential, developed their God-given talents, made corporate decisions, voted for their officers, created benevolent societies, raised money for schools and colleges and scholarships, celebrated their marriages, blessed their babies, mourned their loved ones, deaths, and even learned how to read. That was the role of the Black church. Even people with little faith had great respect and admiration for the church, if for no other reason than it was a surrogate world for Black people. I am certain that, unbeknownst to my father and probably even to the parishioners of my childhood church, they were actively engaging in changing the societal structure of America and in changing the lives and mentality of the citizens of our rural community. They did not know that they were being agents of social change. I can only speculate that they probably saw their development and implementation of social problems and services and their advocacy for the voiceless as a religious act of obedience, not fully understanding the impact and lasting effects of their persistent efforts to bring about positive change in the lives of individuals and in the life of our community. Now, over 50 years later, it is because of these vivid childhood memories that I seek to renew and strengthen the passion, purpose, and efforts of the Black church and the Black community to promote and engage in social, economic, racial, and political issues in the year 2022. These actions will bring about positive change for all people. It is because of these memories that I am driven to ensure that social well-being and security begins with everyone's right to be healthy and educated, to work for livable wages, to have adequate housing in a safe community, and to be afforded opportunities to be productive citizens of society. Although my belief and my solo drive are admirable and valuable, it is not enough. It is not enough. I have come to the realization that in order to ignite the type of social change movement, my belief and drive must somehow become paramount beliefs and drives of not only for Black churches and for the Black community, but also for the white churches and the white community, Latinx churches and the Latinx community, Asian churches and the Asian community, Jewish mosques and the Jewish community, Middle Eastern temples and the Middle Eastern community. Yes, the entire community. We all are aware of the abhorrence of our nation's current atrocities, the detrimental effects of COVID-19, the public hatred and violence exerted due to one's racial, religious, and sexual identity, the widening of the economic divide, the political infighting around issues like voting rights, the January 6th insurrection, and so many other divisive issues, the mental health and opioid crisis that are causing the deaths of too many people, the continuation of exclusion. But what do we see locally? Yes, here at home, right here in Spartanburg County, especially in our Black communities. Do we see the fast pace of gentrification? Do we see a lack of affordable housing and the abundance of substandard housing? Do we see the lack of affordable housing and the abundance of substandard housing? Are we aware of the appalling 22% school readiness level of children entering kindergarten, and of the 27% of third graders who are on grade level for reading within one of our 3 census areas in the South Side community? Do we comprehend the severity of the physical and mental health disparities? Do we acknowledge the systemic and structural inequities, injustices, exclusions, and discriminatory practices that still raise their ugly heads today? Do we hear the cries for opportunities to be better, for inclusion in the decision-making process, for respect and acceptance for being one's authentic self, for equal access and engagement? This is what I see and hear today in the present, living as a Black woman in America, living as a Black woman in Spartanburg County, South Carolina. Unfortunately, some of these same issues that I saw that plagued the Black community where I grew up as a child still are present today. The challenges are real and the struggle continues, but hope is still alive and the journey to one America, one Spartanburg, one people continues. In 2006, Mother Teresa stated, "I believe that people today think that poor people are not human like them. They look down on them, but if they had a deep respect for the poor, I am sure it would be easy for them to come closer to them and to see that they have as much right to the things of life and to love as anybody else." I do believe that Mother Teresa wouldn't mind if I kept in the same sentiments, would adapt her quote to state, "I believe that people today think that African American people are not human like them. They look down on them, but if they had a deep respect for African Americans, I am sure it would be easy for them to come closer to them and to see that they have as much right to the things of life and to love as anybody else." So within my spheres of influences and in my spaces of tokenism, I share my message of oneness, a message of love for humanity, a message of we are our brother's keeper. And I challenge you to bravely do the same. By no means am I suggesting or implying that racism, hatred, and prejudice exist in this room. But my task today is to truthfully share with you my lived experience and the lived experiences of African Americans in America, African Americans in Spartanburg County. You may be thinking, what is she talking about? We've just witnessed the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson, an African American female, for the Supreme Court by the President of the United States. That is exactly what I'm speaking about. The optics of places and positions must reflect what America looks like. America, a melting pot of people that possess talents, greatness, and qualifications. People who can lead and serve regardless of their race. My prayer and hope are that we embrace racial differences, the beauty of cultural distinctions, the variance in political and religious orientations, and begin to see, respect, and value each other as beautiful creations of God, in spite of our likes and dislikes, our selfish beliefs and philosophies, and yes, even our skin color. I ask that you join me in motivating and galvanizing all houses of worship, all communities, the entire community, the one Spartanburg that we have branded ourselves to be, to continue to meet the needs and disparities of those who are marginalized and disenfranchised, those people of color, for we are our brother's keeper. Thank you for listening and hearing my heart as I share the reality of the presence for me and the presence for African Americans. The ultimate aim of racial equity and reconciliation is in this present age is to individually and collectively advance the cause for positive change that will result in increased socioeconomic well-being, human dignity, people's rights and powers, and the greatest of these, increased love. Love for all humanity in spite of.
I have never followed Dr. Snoddy in a speaking environment, and I don't think I want to do it again after today. When Joan reached out to me a year ago to ask if I would do this, I said, well, that's a year away. She says, yes, it's a year away. And we had a pact that I would come here, but she also had to have other places where I could go and tell my story. And that's what she said she wanted me to do here tonight, is tell my story. And I believe that in life, that we all come to a number of forks in the road, and we have to make choices. I'd like to think that all my choices were going left instead of right. One of those forks in the road, as I thought about how did I get here today, here in Spartanburg, my hometown. I grew up here, but how did I get to this moment? And I thought about a moment back when I was in high school at Carver, and I was in the next to the last class to graduate. And I remember we had just had the protest, and we were protesting the shutting down of our beloved high school to go to Spartanburg High. We didn't like it. And we had a protest. And on this day that we were having a protest, we were also having a school assembly. Those who were in the protest went to the library, and those who weren't in the protest went to the assembly. I went to the assembly. And I sat behind one of my favorite teachers who scared me to death but inspired the heck out of me, Lavinia Barksdale. And I was sitting with one of my friends, my buddies, and I said something to the effect of, we need to organize against this. Ms. Barksdale turned around and looked at me. And if you've ever been a student of hers, when she looked at you, she looked at you. And at that moment, I realized why I was in the assembly. I was afraid. I was afraid to step out and take a stand. After that assembly, I walked into my fellow classmates and said, I'm joining you, because it was what I needed to do. That was the beginning moment for me to bring me here today and to be here in Spartanburg. Another fork in the road that I had was after college. And I went to an HBCU, Livingstone College up in Salisbury. And I came home and I was sitting in our little 4-room house, and it was 4 rooms, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room, right around the corner from, I'll always call you Sandra Giles, okay, right around the corner from her. And I just finished having one of my revolutionary rants with my mother. And I must have gone on for about 15 minutes. I was just ranting. And it was about the white man, our station in life and where we were as black people. And my mother looked at me when I paused. And she said, boy, you're not going to sit up here in my house, talk all this stuff, and not work. She said, here's who I want you to see starting tomorrow. And she rattled off a bunch of names, and Mr. Oliver was one of them. Someone mentioned him to me a few minutes ago. The other was Mr. Dewey Tullis, who was my high school counselor. And he said, and I went to see him, and he said, man, you wrote for the school newspaper, didn't you? I said, yes, I did. I never wrote for the school newspaper. I just knew that was the right answer. He said, man, I'm going up to Asheville tomorrow, next week. And I'm going to see the station manager about hiring a black reporter. You interested? Well, I'm a college student out of college, and my mother just told me to get a job or else I couldn't stay there. And by the way, she gave me 6 weeks to get a job. 6 weeks. And I knew I couldn't stay there, so I said yes. So the following week, Mr. Tullis picked me up at our house, and I was in my best gray polka dot suit with my high heel shoes on and my afro out to here. And I went up to Asheville, met with the station manager, and he said, okay, can you do an audition? And yes, I'm here, I'll do an audition. The worst audition in television. But little did I know that at that time, Dewey Tullis was negotiating my hire. After that audition, I came back to the general manager's office. And he said, "You're hired. We're going to pay you $125 a week." To me, that was a whole lot of money because I had no job. "And you start in 2 weeks." And I was the first black reporter at Channel 13 in Asheville, North Carolina. That started an adventure of a lifetime up and down the eastern seaboard. And I was gone for about 45 years until I returned in 2015. And I came back home to help take care of my mother. She was in her 90s. One of my older sister had passed away who was helping her. And I had wonderful, glorious moments of taking care of her when she lived with me for about almost 2 years. And after she passed, I asked myself, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do? The reason you moved here no longer exists. So I said to myself, look around your city. And when I looked around, I saw a lot of things had changed, but a lot of things had not. Some of the things that Dr. Snoddy was talking about, I saw. Then the other question came, what you gonna do? That was one of my mother's favorite sayings, what you gonna do? And so a friend of mine, Horace Littlejohn, was running for re-election, and he wanted me to come work with his campaign. I said, that's one of the things that I can do. And we helped him, and I worked on his campaign, and he got re-elected. And Horace got re-elected with just over 2,500 votes in the citywide election here in Spartanburg. Over 20,000 people are registered to vote at that point in time. I was appalled at the number of people who did not exercise that basic right to vote, that basic voice. So I set out with a cohort of mine, and by the way, my wife said that she wished she could be here, but she could not. She's the one who corrects me on cohort and cohort. And so Sheila, would you tell her I said that she couldn't be here? Okay. So we started an organization because we wanted to get more people engaged in Spartanburg. In the black community at that time, we were voting at 48% of registered voters. 48%. There's no way under the sun you can change public policy voting at those levels. So I joined Dr. Snoddy and a few other people, and we created what is known as the Upstate Action Alliance, all to get people engaged in the electoral process, that basic right that we have as citizens. And during the 2020 election, we set some goals. We targeted 27 predominantly black precincts out of 98 in the county. Our goal was to increase voting by just 10%. We exceeded that goal. And in that election, the voter turnout in the county was about 73% in 2020. And then we said, what's next? We got to keep this going. We can't stop because now we got people interested. We got them out. And then this whole thing of redistricting popped up. And I went through a boot camp and decided that I wanted to work on redistricting in the state of South Carolina. And I'm one of 3 people in the state that go across the state to get people engaged in the process. And now here in Spartanburg, we've created an oversight committee. We don't have any power, but we have our voices, and we have what I will call the bully pulpit. And we are hopefully making people interested. And if you're not interested in redistricting, please talk to me. Because it is the most important thing that faces us right now for the next 10 years. Setting the districts of who you vote for, who will then set policy for how we live in our state and in our country. And we have a bitter battle. That's my cue. I got 3 minutes, right? Okay. So I want to end on this story. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was sitting at home watching my morning talk shows because I'm a news junkie. And there was this interview that Jonathan Capehart was doing. And he was talking to a guy by the name of Dr. Jones. And Dr. Jones was telling a story about how he would sneak paper into this person in this jail in Alabama. And how after the person would do the writing, he would go back in and sneak out the writings from that person. That person was Dr. King. The writings were the letters from a Birmingham jail. And I realized at that time I had not read the letter from a Birmingham jail. So I sat down and I did. And I thought it was appropriate to end this comment today with that, because his response in that letter from a Birmingham jail was to a group of religious leaders, white religious leaders in Birmingham. They felt that he was being too aggressive, that he was causing too much of a ruckus in their town, and they wanted him to slow down. And his response was a letter from a Birmingham jail. And in that, he talked about injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He wrote about just versus unjust laws. He also wrote about what he feared was the greatest stumbling block to blacks achieving equality and justice. And he calls them the white moderate, because they were silent. They did not engage. He also went on to talk about oppressed people will never be released by the oppressor. And you will hear black folks talk about that all the time. And then he talked about his disappointment in the white church, that they were not engaged in the battle, that they were not going out with him and walking and protesting for the change. And he felt that they were comfortable in their silence. And he was asking them, get engaged, come off the sidelines. And so as I thought about my end here, and I see that my timekeeper is standing, I end with this call and the challenge to you. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit on the sidelines and not exercise your voice? Or are you going to get engaged and show up? Because if you don't, there's this saying, bad things happen when good people remain silent. Do not remain silent. Thank you.
As much as I hated to cut Charles off, time is fleeting, and we have a service to finish, but I'm asking everyone to stay and talk to our guest over refreshments at the end of the service. Once again, I'd like to thank Vera Jeter Jones for your heart-touching story, and Shelor Snoddy for giving us an idea of what the black community faced and continues to face. And definitely to Charles, I say thank you for giving us a path to the future, a better future.
At this time in our service, we reflect prayerfully on what we have heard, on where we are in our own lives with our joys and our concerns. This has certainly been a week full of ups and downs. And so as part of our service, we come to the center altar where we lit the candles that showed that we blessed our time together, and now we drop our prayers in the form of pebbles into one of the four vases. These are our joys, they are our concerns. It's done in silence because we name this in our hearts. And so I invite you to go to one of the 4 prayer stations, one of the vases. And as we drop our pebbles, the beautiful bubbles that reach to the surface are our prayers, bubbling to the surface and becoming one with the universe. Will you join me, please? So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Patrice is going to lead us in the first 2 verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing. This is what we're going to do. We're going to stand and sing together, honoring the beautiful stories that we have heard this evening. Please stand. Patrice is going to send us out of this room as we sing at the end of our service the third verse. Our offering this evening, a portion of it, is being donated in honor of Vera and Sheila and Charles, who shared their stories with us this evening. We will be honoring them by sharing a donation with the Spartanburg City and County Ecumenical Ministry Society, the Cub Pack at Mount Moriah Baptist Church, and those little guys are just adorable because we were all on the interfaith pilgrimage together. Right, Sheila? Right, Carol? Yes, they were wonderful. And also to Upstate Action Alliance. So we are going to pass our offering stars around. Sandy and Andy are going to pass those around. Peter is going to play. We are grateful because we are dependent on you for sharing your time, your talent, and your treasure with us. We could not be meeting without each one of you and your generosity. Thank you. You want to grab the stars? I would invite each and every one of us to stand as we honor the directions, the invocation of directions. This is one of the rituals that Sacred Traditions and Rituals honors each and every time we gather together.
If you would join us, please, and face east. And all together. Great Spirit of light, come to us out of the east with the power of the rising sun. Let there be light in our words. Let there be light in the path that we walk. Let us remember always that you give the gift of a new day. And never let us be burdened with sorrow by not starting over. Quarter turn to the left.
Facing to the north. Great Spirit of love, come to us with the power of the north. Make us courageous when the winds fall upon us. Give us strength and endurance for everything that is harsh, everything that hurts, everything that makes us squirt. Let us move through life ready to take what comes from the north. Quarter turn to the left, facing to the west.
Altogether, great life-giving Spirit, we face the west, the direction of sundown. Let us remember every day that the moment will come when our sun will go down. Never let us forget that we must fade into you. Give us a beautiful color, give us a great sky for setting, so that when in our time to meet you, we can come with glory. Quarter turn to the left, facing south.
Great Spirit of creation, send us the warm and soothing winds from the south. Comfort us and caress us when we are tired and cold. Unfold us like the gentle breezes that unfold the leaves on the trees. As you give to all the earth warm, moving wind, give to us so that we may grow close to you in warmth. We did not create the web of life, but are strands in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. Facing to the center. Namaste.
We have all experienced a sweet and a bitter sip of green tea so that as we begin this week, we begin more balanced and in harmony. I have a point of personal privilege, I guess. I understand that there is a very special birthday this week. We have a violinist who shares his treasure, his time with us. He has a very special birthday coming up this week. He's filling in because, he's doing it all this evening because our other musician wasn't able to be with us. So I'm going to ask that we sing Peter Moore, commonly known as St. Peter, Happy Birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Peter. Happy birthday to you. Those of you who don't know Peter, you need to meet him. He takes good care of all of us. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much, and happy birthday. We're going to close this evening with a prayer, and then Patrice is going to lead us in that third verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing. As we're saying the prayer, Carol, would you go and extinguish the community candle? I believe the snuffer is on the table. If you will all please stand and join your voices with me. And though we extinguish our community candle, we do not extinguish the warmth of community, the spirit of gratitude, the fire of commitment, and our compassion during this time together as community. The light of hope, hope for change that brings new blessings into our lives and the lives of those around us, remains and will continue to burn brightly. We carry the hope in our hearts until we are together again. Amen. And now the third verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing. With this blessing, may the God who dances in creation, who embraces us with human love, who shakes us like thunder, bless us and drive us out into the world with power to fill the world with her justice. Amen. Will you please join us for refreshments and to meet and greet and thank these wonderful new friends. Amen.